Picture this. It's 3 a.m. and you're scrolling through your phone, seeing friends post their latest purchases, vacations, achievements. Your thumb keeps moving, but something inside feels empty. Sound familiar? Today, I want to share a story that happened over 2,000 years ago, yet speaks directly to our modern struggle with wanting more, having more, and somehow still feeling like it's never enough. This is the tale of a merchant. Let's call him Jiang Wei, who lived during the time of the great philosopher Lao Tzu in ancient China. But this story could happen today, tomorrow, or any time humans have mistaken having for being. Jiang Wei was what we'd call a success story. He owned the largest silk trading business in his province, had warehouses full of precious goods, a mansion that made his neighbors envious, and enough gold to last several lifetimes. By every measure society taught him to value, he had won at life. Yet every morning, he woke with a knot in his stomach and a question echoing in his mind. Why does this feel so hollow? Jiang Wei's daily routine was a masterclass in what we now call hustle culture. Up before dawn, checking inventory, negotiating deals, expanding his empire. He was essentially the ancient world's version of someone with 17 browser tabs open, 3 cups of coffee down, and a to-do list longer than a CVS receipt. The irony wasn't lost on him that the more successful he became, the more anxious he felt. It reminds me of what the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. But Jiang Wei couldn't stop thinking about what he didn't have yet. His neighbor had just imported rare spices from India. A rival merchant was building an even grander house. The emperor himself was said to own a jade collection that made Jiang Wei's seem pedestrian. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because not much has changed. We live in the age of Instagram stories and LinkedIn humble brags, where everyone's highlight reel becomes our daily comparison. The Buddha, 25 centuries ago, identified this exact problem. The root of suffering is attachment. And boy, was Jiang Wei attached to his possessions, his status, his image. One evening, after a particularly profitable but exhausting day, Jiang Wei sat in his courtyard surrounded by silk tapestries worth more than most people's homes. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. I have everything, he whispered to the night sky. So why do I feel like I have nothing? As if the universe had heard his question, an old woman appeared at his gate. She was clearly poor, patched clothes, weathered hands, a walking stick carved from simple wood. Everything Jiang Wei had been taught to pity or ignore. "Kind sir," she said with a gentle smile, "might you spare some food for an old woman?" Jiang Wei's first instinct was irritation. He was contemplating the meaning of existence, and here was this beggar interrupting his profound moment. But something in her eyes, a kind of peace he'd never seen in any mirror, made him pause. He brought her rice and tea, expecting her to eat quickly and leave. Instead, she ate slowly, savoring each grain as if it were a delicacy from the emperor's table. "You seem troubled, young man," she said between bites. "What weighs on one so abundantly blessed?" Jiang Wei almost laughed. Here was someone with literally nothing, asking about his troubles. But her question was genuine, so he found himself answering honestly. "I have everything I thought I wanted," he said, "but I feel empty. Every achievement just makes me want the next one. Every possession just reminds me of what I don't possess yet." The old woman nodded knowingly. "Ah," she said, "you suffer from the richest man's poverty." "What do you mean?" The poverty of never having enough, no matter how much you have. That night, Jiang Wei fell into the deepest sleep he'd had in years. And in that sleep, he had the most vivid dream of his life. He found himself standing in his warehouse, but something was different. All his precious silks, his gold, his rare artifacts, they were fading, becoming transparent, like mist in the morning sun. "What's happening?" he cried out. "Nothing is happening," came a familiar voice. "You're simply seeing things as they truly are." He turned to see the old woman from his gate, but she looked different now. Her patched clothes had become simple robes, her walking stick a staff of light, and her weathered face held the wisdom of ages. She had transformed into something he recognized from the stories. A bodhisattva, an enlightened being. "Who are you?" Jiang Wei whispered. "I am what you call Guan Yin, the goddess of compassion. But names are just labels we put on the infinite. I am here because your heart cried out for truth." As she spoke, the walls of his warehouse began to dissolve, and they found themselves in a vast marketplace unlike anything Jiang Wei had ever seen. It stretched to the horizon, filled with every conceivable thing a person could want. "This," Guan Yin said, "is the marketplace of desire. Every human soul passes through here." Jiang Wei watched in fascination and horror as people rushed from stall to stall, their arms full of purchases, their faces etched with a desperate hunger that no amount of buying seemed to satisfy. He saw a man carrying dozens of mirrors, constantly checking his reflection but never seeming to like what he saw. A woman collected beautiful masks, wearing a different one each moment, never showing her true face. Children ran past clutching toys that broke the moment they touched them, immediately reaching for new ones. "This is madness," Jiang Wei breathed. "This is what Lao Tzu called the endless appetite," Guan Yin replied. "These people believe that the next purchase will fill the hole in their hearts. But external things cannot heal internal emptiness." He saw a man carrying dozens of mirrors, constantly checking his reflection but never seeming to like what he saw. A woman collected beautiful masks, wearing a different one each moment, never showing her true face. Children ran past clutching toys that broke the moment they touched them, immediately reaching for new ones. "This is madness," Jiang Wei breathed. "This is what Lao Tzu called the endless appetite," Guan Yin replied. "These people believe that the next purchase will fill the hole in their hearts. But external things cannot heal internal emptiness." Jiang Wei noticed something troubling. He recognized himself among the shoppers. There he was, loading cart after cart with silk and gold, his face wearing the same desperate expression as all the others. "That's not me," he protested. "I'm a successful businessman." "Is there a difference?" Guan Yin asked gently. As if in response to her question, Jiang Wei watched his dream self approach a stall selling status. The merchant behind the counter looked eerily like him, but older, more tired. "What's your finest status symbol?" Dream Jiang Wei asked eagerly. "Well," the merchant replied wearily, "I have this beautiful sense of superiority, guaranteed to make you feel better than your neighbors. Side effects may include anxiety, loneliness, and an insatiable need for more." "Perfect! I'll take 10. Jiang Wei watched himself purchase status after status, but each one dissolved in his hands the moment someone nearby bought something even more impressive. The Greek philosopher Epictetus taught his students, Guan Yin said, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Your dream self is learning this lesson the hard way." Suddenly, the chaotic marketplace began to fade, and Jiang Wei found himself in a serene garden. In the center sat a man in simple robes, radiating such peace that even the air around him seemed calm. That's the Buddha, Guan Yin whispered. He was once a prince with everything your heart desires, wealth, power, pleasure. Yet he left it all to find something more precious. Zhang Wei approached cautiously. The Buddha looked up with eyes that seemed to hold infinite kindness. You look troubled, friend, the Buddha said. What brings you pain? I have everything, Zhang Wei replied, but I feel empty. The Buddha smiled. Tell me, when you eat rice, does the rice in your neighbor's bowl nourish you? Of course not. When you sleep in your bed, does owning your neighbor's bed make your rest more peaceful? No. When you find joy in a sunset, does owning the sky add to that joy? Zhang Wei began to see where this was leading. No, it doesn't. Then why? The Buddha asked gently. Do you believe that owning more things will fill an emptiness that has nothing to do with things? The question hit Zhang Wei like lightning. In all his years of accumulating wealth, he had never asked himself why he assumed that external additions could solve internal subtraction. But, Zhang Wei protested, if I don't strive for more, won't I become lazy, unsuccessful? Here, another figure approached, the Persian poet Rumi, his eyes dancing with divine mischief. My friend, Rumi said, you mistake striving for grasping. The river strives constantly toward the ocean, but it doesn't try to possess every rock it passes. It flows around them, grateful for the journey. As Rumi spoke, the garden around them transformed into a flowing river. Zhang Wei watched merchants along the banks trying to capture the water in buckets, nets, boxes, anything to make it theirs. But the water kept flowing, indifferent to their efforts. Your possessions are like that water, Rumi continued. The harder you grasp, the more they slip through your fingers. But if you open your hands, they will flow through your life, blessing you in their passing without becoming prisons of attachment. Zhang Wei felt something profound shifting in his understanding. So you're saying I should give up my business? Become poor? Oh no, laughed a new voice. Zhang Wei turned to see Lao Tzu, the ancient sage whose teachings had shaped Chinese philosophy for millennia. Poverty and wealth are both attachments, Lao Tzu said. The sage is neither rich nor poor. He is content. Contentment is the greatest wealth because it can never be stolen, never decrease, never leave you wanting. But how can I run a business without caring about profit? Who said anything about not caring? Lao Tzu smiled. Care about your work because it serves others. Care about your profits because they enable generosity. Care about your success because it creates opportunities. But don't confuse caring with clinging. To illustrate, Lao Tzu gestured to a gardener tending flowers nearby. Watch him. He cares deeply for each plant, watering, pruning, protecting. But when autumn comes, he doesn't weep as the flowers fade. He knows that clinging to what must change only brings suffering. Zhang Wei watched the gardener work with such presence and joy that even his simple tasks seemed sacred. The difference, the Buddha added, is between having things and things having you. As these profound truths settled into Zhang Wei's heart, the scene changed once more. He found himself back at his own gate, but now he was watching from the outside as his past self met the old woman, who he now knew was Guan Yin in disguise. But this time, he could see the scene from her perspective. Look closely, Guan Yin said, at what you called having nothing. Zhang Wei watched as his past self brought the old woman food, but now he could see what he had missed before. As she ate, her gratitude transformed the simple rice into a feast. Her smile made the humble tea precious as wine. Her contentment turned the hard ground where she sat into a throne. She had everything, Jiang Wei whispered in amazement. She had enough, Guan Yin corrected. And enough, my dear merchant, is the secret that makes kings of beggars and beggars of kings. Suddenly, Jiang Wei heard familiar laughter. Approaching them was Nasruddin Hoja, the beloved wise fool of Middle Eastern folklore, riding his donkey backwards. Hoja! Jiang Wei called out. Why are you riding backwards? I'm not riding backwards, Nasruddin replied with a grin. My donkey is walking forwards, and I'm facing the truth. Most people face forward and walk backward into their future, always looking at what they're leaving behind instead of where they're going. What does that mean? You spend your days looking backward at what you don't have yet, instead of forward at what you already possess. A man who owns everything but appreciates nothing is poorer than a man who owns nothing but appreciates everything. As if to demonstrate, Nasruddin dismounted and picked up a simple stone from the ground. He held it up to the light, examining it with the wonder of a child discovering treasure. What do you see? He asked Jiang Wei. A worthless rock. Ah, there's your poverty. I see a stone that has witnessed countless sunrises, weathered infinite storms, and will outlast both of us. This rock is a teacher of patience, a master of endurance, a monument to the beauty of simplicity. Nasruddin tossed the stone to Jiang Wei, who caught it and for the first time really looked. In that moment, the ordinary stone seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. The Sufi path, said another voice, and Jiang Wei turned to see a figure he recognized from stories. Al-Hallaj, the mystic who spoke of divine love. The Sufi path teaches us that every object is a mirror reflecting the divine. Your silk doesn't just clothe the body, it clothes the soul in beauty. Your gold doesn't just purchase goods, it enables generosity. Your house doesn't just shelter you, it welcomes others. But I never thought of it that way, Jiang Wei said, because you were using your possessions to possess you instead of using them as instruments of love. As these teachings wove together in Jiang Wei's consciousness, he felt something extraordinary happening. The garden, the marketplace, all the wise teachers. They began to shimmer and merge until he found himself standing in a place that was both everywhere and nowhere, surrounded by a light that was somehow alive with wisdom. Where am I? He asked. You are in the space between wanting and having, came a voice that seemed to speak from the light itself. This is where contentment lives. And then Jiang Wei saw something that took his breath away. Floating before him were two mirrors. In the first, he saw himself as he was in waking life, surrounded by treasures but spiritually starving, rich in goods but poor in gratitude, successful by society's measures but failing by his soul's standards. In the second mirror, he saw himself transformed. He was still the same merchant, still successful, still wealthy. But now he moved through his life with the contentment of the old woman, the wisdom of Buddha, the flow of Rumi's river. In this reflection, he didn't own his possessions. He stewarded them. He didn't accumulate status. He served others. He didn't chase happiness. He created it through appreciation of what already was. The choice, said the voice of light, is always yours. But how? Jiang Wei cried out. How do I live like this in a world that measures worth by wealth? The same way a lotus grows in muddy water, came the Buddha's gentle voice. You use the conditions without being contaminated by them. Lao Tzu's voice joined in. The sage accomplishes without striving, leads without forcing, teaches without preaching. He succeeds by not competing, profits by not grasping, gains by not taking. And Rumi's voice, like poetry made audible. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. You don't get what you want. You get what you appreciate. Remember, added Guan Yin, wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. Instead of, how can I get more? Ask, how can I appreciate what I have? Instead of, what do I lack? Ask, what can I share? Instead of, how do I compare? Ask, how do I contribute? As these words settled into his heart like seeds finding fertile soil, Jiang Wei felt a profound peace he had never known. It wasn't the peace of having everything he wanted. It was the peace of wanting what he had. Jiang Wei opened his eyes to find himself back in his courtyard, morning sunlight filtering through the trees. For a moment, he wondered if it had all been just a dream. Then he saw something that made him smile. There on his gate was a small stone, the same stone Nasreddin Hoja had given him. But more importantly, something fundamental had shifted in how he saw his world. The silk tapestries surrounding him were still beautiful, but now he saw them as expressions of artistry to be shared rather than trophies to be hoarded. His gold was still valuable, but now he saw it as a tool for generosity rather than a measure of worth. His house was still grand, but now he saw it as a place for hospitality rather than a monument to status. That day, Jiang Wei reopened his business with a transformed heart. He still traded in silk and gold, still made profits, still succeeded. But now, every transaction was an opportunity to serve. Every profit was a chance to give. Every success was a platform for lifting others. He kept a bowl of rice by his gate for any who might need it, remembering the old woman whose poverty had revealed his spiritual wealth. He began each day not by checking his ledgers, but by listing 3 things he was grateful for. He ended each day not by calculating his gains, but by reflecting on how he had contributed to others' well-being. The most remarkable thing was this: his business grew more successful than ever. But this time, success felt different. It felt enough. Years later, when young merchants would come to him seeking the secret to wealth, Jiang Wei would tell them about a dream he once had, and a question that changed everything. What if true wealth isn't about having everything you want, but about wanting what you have? My friends, Jiang Wei's story isn't just an ancient tale. It's a mirror for our modern moment. We live in an age where we can buy anything with a click, compare ourselves to anyone with a scroll, and chase every desire with a swipe. But the wisdom of the ages whispers the same truth to every generation. External abundance without internal gratitude is just sophisticated poverty. The question isn't whether you should have nice things, pursue success, or want a better life. The question is, can you enjoy what you have while working toward what you want? Can you be grateful for today while building tomorrow? Can you find contentment in the journey instead of only in the destination? As Rumi said, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. What really calls to you? Beyond the noise of advertising, social media, and cultural pressure, what does your soul actually want? Maybe it's not another purchase, promotion, or possession. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's presence. Maybe it's the simple, profound joy of being alive in this moment, grateful for this breath, content with this now. The choice, as always, is yours. Until next time, remember, you already have everything you need to be happy. You just might need to remember how to see it.